was thinking of the Roman Empire the other day, as you do, when my mind sort of wandered onto the subject of bass drums, and more specifically about the very pleasing effect the LXR-02 notch filter has on bass drum sounds. It was a great epiphany. But then I thought, why is it so? So out came the spectrum analyzer, and then I had other questions. Since I was thinking so deeply upon bass drums, I was thinking, hang on a second, should I be calling this a bass drum or a kick drum? And in all these years, I've never bothered to find out what the difference is. It turns out that a kick drum is just a specific type of bass drum in the bass drum family. And the bass drum family is the orchestral concert bass drum, which tends to be very large, the marching bass drum, and the drum kit bass drum. And the drum kit bass is called a kick because it's operated with your foot, and also explains why bass drums are called bass drums on drum machines and not kick drums. But mixers and engineers will usually call them kick drums so they can write their little labels and not get mixed up with bass guitars and other bass instruments. So they will call it a kick whether or not you've actually used your foot. So it was all supremely logical after all. Now, in this video, I'm not going to presume to tell you what a good bass drum sound is, because that's all in the ear of the beholder, but rather exactly how the synth engine works on the LXR-02, specifically looking at bass drum sounds, so you can get the sound you want. So let's load the default kit, initialize kit, and go through some of the basic parameters. Now, instead of using my finger to tap the sound all the time, I'll play some fairly repetitive and irritating patterns as we go along, just because, as you'll notice, the little buttons here on the LXR actually make quite a noise, so that can be a bit distracting. So let's just play what we've got. Now, that's rather minimal, which I'll explain why in a moment, but let's go into the oscillator type. So we've got sine, triangle, which adds some more harmonics. And if we go into the other wave shapes, we just start getting a bass sound rather than a bass drum. So let's put it on sine for now. Now the coarse tuning, increments of 12 equals an octave, so there's C, there's the next C down. I don't know why they've chosen 29, but let's say there's a good reason for it. Now you might be part of the bass drums should be tuned to the song or not tuned to the song school. Certainly in marching bands, the bass drum usually is tuned to whatever they're playing, but since we're not playing a song, we haven't got that controversy to worry about. Now, the initialized kit here does come with some drive already part of the sound, which is a bit cheeky. And if we turn that up, we'll see that as well as a giant volume boost, it gives us a lot more harmonics. So now we've got just a pure sine wave bass drum with the default envelope settings. Now the envelopes on the LXR-02 are actually quite complex, so it's worth taking a minute to really think about them. Now prepare your ears for some horrible things here. As you know, for this particular model type on voice 1, we've got two envelopes. We've got an amplitude envelope and a pitch envelope. Well, there's also actually a velocity envelope, but we won't get into that. Now the pitch envelope lives within the amplitude envelope. So for this purpose, we will put the amplitude envelope all the way, well, almost all the way. If you put the amplitude up to 127, it will drone. Now I've done it. There we are. So we won't quite go all the way. just so we can hear what the pitch envelope is doing and actually see it on the spectrum analyzer a bit more easily. Now, I should also mention actually about the slope parameter, which is the same on the pitch envelope and the amp envelope in what its shape is. Up at the top here, it's logarithmic, which means it's like a waterfall shape. At the halfway point, around in the mid-60s, it's linear, straight line, and then down the bottom here, it's exponential, that very sharp little zappy envelope, like a ski slope. We'll make this an extremely long linear envelope. So now that will allow us to really hear what this pitch envelope is doing. The mod amount in the pitch mod is the amount of initial sort of pitch zap that we get, and the decay is the length of the slope. So the slope isn't an absolute value. The slope is shortened or lengthened by what you do with the decay. So let's hear that. Now we know that the amp envelope is fully open. So let's look at what happens. Let's wind up the pitch mod a lot. So you can almost see the shape of that exponential envelope, and if we put it up to linear, now you can see that line, that straight line here for the linear pitch mod envelope. And then if we take it up to logarithmic, let's give it a bigger decay. To exponential. So you can see that's an exponential curve. But now if we change the decay, that curve will happen over increasingly short times. Oops, if I turn it the right way it will. Chance there. So that you can actually get these to almost simulate each other depending on how you put these controls. So here we've got a linear one, but if we put the decay short enough, the slope increases relatively because it's been crammed into a smaller space. But if we lengthen it out, that slope gets shallower. And likewise, if we push this all the way up, that logarithmic shape, I think that's very interesting, the way that these things interact with each other. And remember that all this has to take place within the amplitude envelope. Now, if you haven't got headphones on, you probably won't realise there's been this incredibly low drone hammering your poor cones the whole time. But if we take that right down, then back here where we were listening to all these different manifestations of the slope and how it got compressed or elongated with the decay, all that beauty sort of fades away because it's all got to be contained within this volume profile. And if the pitch mod envelope does all its stuff extremely quickly, but as we were listening to before, if the amplitude envelope is still open, then the pitch mod will finish all its work, the amplitude envelope will still be going, so the volume will still be there, and you'll then just hear the flat tone of whatever your particular oscillator control and pitch happens to be. And that can result in some boominess. And if you're not listening on headphones, you might not even recognize that you're getting that boominess because your speakers may not be able to manifest that to you. So bass drums in particular require, I always think, a mixture between listening out in the real world to make sure you've got something that actually sounds like a bass drum for people who are listening on little systems or tiny earbuds or other such things, and headphones so you can actually check that you're getting that real bottom end thump and no boominess. And in fact, the boominess here has a bit of a real world equivalent, and that is a drummer usually will have a blanket or a pillow or some such thing inside their kick drum to mute or reduce the long boominess. So in fact, you could consider this decay knob here on the amplitude an inverse blanket knob. So the lower the number, the larger the metaphorical blanket, or perhaps in reverse, as you increase the number, you could say this is pillow attenuation. I'm making the pillow smaller, and people will think you're extremely silly. So at last we can come to the filter. Well, the filter at the moment is just a totally open low pass. So if we turn that off, is there a difference? Yes, well, maybe, but in any case, low pass filters on the bass, well, I'm sure in different contexts they may have their uses, but of course you can high pass the bass if you really want to take the guts out of it for whatever reason. Generally though, most of these filter types aren't going to deliver something terribly satisfying until we get to the notch. Now again, if we look at this analyzer quite carefully, we see we've got the fundamental there at 48 Hertz, which is not bad. And we've got the dip here. Now, a notch filter takes out a chunk of frequencies. I think it's here at the moment. Actually, let's put it onto something where we can get a better idea of what's going on. Okay, let's see how long it takes us to be driven crazy by this sound. Filter, right. Now here we can pretty easily see how the notch, see that little valley there, that notch is taking out a chunk of frequencies until we get down to where it's actually reducing that fundamental frequency, which is pretty low. Well, there it is, it's chopping the guts out of the actual fundamental. If we take it up, and we can see it's here. So, nice little way to carve out some stuff. And depending on who you listen to, you can be considered good to take a chunk out of your sound somewhere in that sort of a range, you know, maybe from sort of 300s to 800s or 900s. I'm not saying that's the absolute way to do it, just that some people say that this is not a bad idea. But certainly you can hear, just by moving that little valley around, we're getting different flavours. And that's what I think the beauty of the notch filter is. This is like the flavour knob. And I think if you're trying to simulate other particular bass drum sounds, this is probably going to help you zoom in on that particular tone. And of course, you could just record it and then do the same thing, perhaps a lot better with a good EQ plugin, but why not try to get the right tone at the source? Now, the resonance here increases the width of that notch, but I find the more you increase it, the more it seems to just disappear, as you can see here. So, don't find that particularly satisfying. If we pump up the drive, again, I don't find that particularly satisfying. So, let's leave it a bit like that. Now, other wisdom with the bass drum will say it's nice to have a little bit of a click, a bit of a transient. Now, this could be up around 7 or 8 or 9 or something like that, but also nice to have a bit of an attack somewhere in probably in this range here. Again, this is just conventional wisdom, I'm not saying it's right. So let's see what we can do about that. So we've carved out our little valley here. Let's see whether we can get a nice little attack in there. So we'll go to, let's rest our ears for a minute. We'll go to the little transient generator, and the two best ones I think for this sort of thing is snap, and this is actually another little pitch envelope. So the volume here is the depth of the pitch envelope and the frequency is the decay time. So let's have a listen to that. So there's maximum depth, and this will be the decay time. So short, that's certainly giving us the attack. Is it in the range we like? Maybe. And there you hear it's getting a bit longer, so the lower you go, the longer that becomes. Actually going down in frequency there. Yeah, we can't get up much higher than that. What's that? 1.6. So let's try another one, and that's offset. Now with offset, the frequency knob actually does nothing, and all the offset is where the oscillator starts in its phase, so it's phase offset. So normally on a synth you wouldn't want phase offset to give you a click, but in this you're looking for a click. So let's see where it will. It's a bit hard to see where it's manifesting, but we can certainly hear it. So there it is with nothing. There it is phase offset so we get the maximum click when the wave starts. Change that to triangle. Maybe we can see some action in there. Now the other transient things here, they're all just little samples. They're 8-bit samples up to about 50 milliseconds. And depending on what you're doing, it may suit you perfectly. Let's go back to offset, just to give us that little click. Now that's the absolute fundamentals of a bass drum sound. I mean, once you've chosen your oscillator type, given it the tuning you want, the pitch mod envelope, which perhaps is the most important aspect to fine tune, and then the amplitude envelope in which that pitch envelope must live. You've added a click if you want it. Perhaps you've carved some frequency out with the notch filter. I think at that point you've probably done 98% of the job. But if you want other little bits that are interesting, you could go into here where you've got a second oscillator. Maybe change this to noise. Push the noise up and then give it an amount. Now, your bass drum will very quickly disappear. And even 2 seems quite a lot. Say 1. Well, let's say 2. Then you could go into the LFO, put it on sync, give it some oomph. What's the destination? Whoops, what's the destination? And I mean, if you fiddle with these things too much, it's sort of not really going to be a bass drum anymore. It's going to be something sort of weird. But that might be the sound you're looking for. Probably doing that might be better off on a different voice and just keeping your bass drum pure. And you could use it for transient volume. That's an interesting one. Change the amount of click you're getting. Filter frequency, well, go for the classic. It's interacting now with just that little tiny bit of noise we added. Well, you might decide to be a heretic and change the type of filter. Again, that's adding an interesting little sort of effect. But again, that's probably best left to a different voice, I would think. So there we have it. We haven't heard a million beautiful bass drums perhaps, but hopefully you have a very clear understanding of the tools available to make your bass drum sound and can quickly zero in on what you want. Until next time, see ya.